Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The moment I turned the guest room doorknob, something inside me already knew my life would never sound the same again. The house was too quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the kind that hums in your ears, the kind that warns you. I had come home early, arms full of grocery bags, heart full of the ordinary. A wife returning to her husband. A woman expecting familiarity. Instead, I found a scene that felt suspended in heat and betrayal. The door wasn't fully closed. Just slightly ajar. Enough to let in a thin blade of golden evening light, and a whisper. Her whisper. Soft. Breathless. Saying his name like it belonged to her. I didn't burst in. I didn't scream. I simply pushed the door open. And there she was, perched on the edge of the guest bed, leaning over him, her hair spilling forward like silk curtains. Her hands rested against his chest, not frantic, not desperate, intimate. Deliberate. His eyes were closed. Not in shock. Not in resistance. In surrender. For a split second, none of us moved. The air thickened. He looked up first. And in his face, I didn't see guilt the way I expected. I saw confusion. Conflict. Something unresolved. Something that had been building long before this room, this house, this marriage. And then she looked at me. Not ashamed. Not smug. Just aware. The kind of awareness two women share when they understand that something unspoken has been standing between them for far too long. You see, this wasn't just about betrayal. It was about tension that had been simmering for months, at dinners, at parties, in lingering hugs that lasted a second too long. It was about the way she would look at me when she thought I wasn't watching. The way her husband's laughter carried across rooms and wrapped around my spine like warmth I wasn't supposed to crave. We had all been orbiting something dangerous. Something magnetic. And that night, the orbit collapsed. My husband slowly sat up, saying my name like a question. But I didn't answer him. I couldn't. Because the real storm wasn't between me and him. It was between her and me. There are moments when anger burns hot and fast. And then there are moments when it transforms into something steady, something powerful. I didn't feel shattered. I felt awake. Fully, terrifyingly awake. Her husband stood near the window, frozen, watching everything unravel. The fading sunlight traced the tension in his jaw, the restraint in his posture. He wasn't innocent in this storm either. None of us were. We had all crossed invisible lines long before tonight. What happens when betrayal isn't just about hurt, but about desire that refuses to stay buried? What happens when the person you're supposed to hate is the one who understands you without speaking? The room held 4 adults. 4 beating hearts. 4 sets of secrets that had finally collided. I stepped fully inside. Closed the door behind me. And in that small, quiet click, everything shifted. Because sometimes the most dangerous decisions aren't made in rage. They're made in silence. And that night, in the golden hush of a guest room that would never feel innocent again, we stood on the edge of something irreversible. Not just broken vows. But buried truths. And as I took one slow breath, meeting her gaze without looking away, I realized this wasn't the end of something safe. It was the beginning of something none of us were prepared to survive. The silence after that click of the door felt louder than any scream. No one moved. The air was thick, fragile, as if one wrong breath would shatter whatever invisible thread held us together. The golden sunset had softened into amber now, shadows stretching longer across the bed, across their faces, across mine. Her eyes didn't leave me. There was no mockery in them. No triumph. Just something raw and unguarded, like she had been caught feeling more than she ever intended to. My husband stood slowly from the edge of the bed, running a hand through his hair. "It's not what it looks like," he began, but the words sounded hollow even to him. They fell between us and dissolved. Because it wasn't about what it looked like. It was about what it felt like. Her husband shifted near the window, his jaw tightening as he glanced between us. He looked like a man watching a storm roll in, unsure whether to run or let it consume him. When his gaze met mine for half a second, something flickered there, recognition. We both knew this tension hadn't started tonight. It had been building in small, dangerous moments. Her brushing my arm during dinner and not pulling away quickly enough. My laugh lingering when he leaned closer to tell a joke. The way she would watch me when I crossed a room, like she was memorizing something she wasn't allowed to want. The way he held eye contact just a heartbeat longer than polite. We had all pretended not to notice. Until now. She finally stepped away from the bed. Not toward me. Not away. Just enough to create space. Her fingers trembled slightly, but her voice, when she spoke, was steady. We didn't plan this. It wasn't an apology. It was a confession. I swallowed, my pulse steady but heavy in my throat. No, I said quietly. You didn't. My husband took a step toward me, but I lifted a hand, just slightly, and he stopped. Not out of fear. Out of uncertainty. For the first time in a long time, he didn't know what I was thinking. And truthfully, neither did I. Because beneath the sting of betrayal was something else. Something warmer. More complicated. I looked at her fully now. At the curve of her shoulders rising and falling with each controlled breath. At the way she held herself, strong, but barely. And I realized the tension between us wasn't rivalry. It was gravity. You've been looking at me like that for months, I said softly. Her lips parted, but she didn't deny it. Instead, she took a small step forward. Careful. Measured. As if approaching something sacred. And you never looked away, she replied. The words slid over my skin. Her husband exhaled sharply, breaking the stillness. We should talk, he said, though his voice carried less authority than uncertainty. All of us. But none of us moved to sit. None of us reached for distance. Because this wasn't a conversation that could be solved with logic. It was about longing. About curiosity. About parts of ourselves we had locked away in the name of safety. My husband's hand brushed mine accidentally as he shifted beside me. The contact was brief. But it sparked something electric. Not comfort. Awareness. He looked down at our hands, then back at my face, searching. Maybe for forgiveness. Maybe for permission. Maybe for understanding he hadn't even given himself. Her gaze followed that small touch. I saw something flash across her expression, jealousy. No. Not exactly. Something closer to fear. Of losing something she hadn't even admitted she wanted. The room felt smaller now. Closer. Her husband stepped forward from the window at last, closing the physical distance between us. He didn't touch anyone. He didn't need to. His presence alone shifted the balance. The heat wasn't explosive. It was slow. Steady. Building. We've all felt it, he said quietly. Haven't we? No one answered. But no one denied it either. I became acutely aware of everything, the subtle scent of her perfume mixing with the faint trace of his cologne. The sound of fabric moving as someone shifted their weight. The warmth radiating from bodies standing too close. This wasn't chaos. It was tension stretched to its breaking point. And still, something held us back. Years of vows. Of loyalty. Of identities carefully built. We were good people. Weren't we? My eyes locked with hers again, and for a split second, the rest of the room faded. I could see the question in her expression. The same one echoing inside me. What would happen if we stopped pretending? But neither of us moved. Not yet. Instead, we stood suspended in that charged stillness, hearts racing, breaths shallow, each of us teetering on the edge of a choice that would change everything. And no one was brave, or reckless, enough to make it. The space between us felt fragile now, like glass stretched thin. No one had raised their voice. No one had stormed out. And somehow that made it worse. Her hand shifted at her side, almost unconsciously, and for a split second I thought she might reach for me. The movement was subtle, barely there, but I felt it like a pulse under my skin. My breath caught before I could stop it. She noticed. Of course she did. Her eyes dropped to my lips, then lifted again, as if she hated herself for even looking. That tiny glance held more confession than any words spoken tonight. My husband cleared his throat softly, but he didn't step between us. He just watched. There was history in his silence, years of routine, of comfort, of choices made and paths followed. We had built something steady together. Predictable. Safe. And safety suddenly felt like the heaviest wall in the room. We can't pretend this is nothing, her husband said quietly, his voice low but controlled. But we also can't destroy everything on a feeling. A feeling. As if that's all this was. She inhaled sharply at his words, her shoulders tightening. I saw it then, the crack in her strength. The fear. Not of scandal. Not of anger. Of wanting too much. She took one slow step toward me anyway. Close enough that I could feel her warmth. Close enough that the scent of her perfume wrapped around my thoughts. My fingers twitched at my side, drawn forward without permission. And for one reckless second, our hands brushed. It was barely a touch. But it ignited something undeniable. She closed her eyes briefly, just a flicker, and leaned in the slightest inch, as if gravity had shifted. My heart thundered so loudly I was certain everyone could hear it. And then she pulled back. Not because she didn't want to. But because she did. The restraint in that single movement said everything. Desire hung between us, thick and unspoken, pressing against vows, against loyalty, against the lives we had carefully constructed. One more inch and everything would collapse. So we stood there, trembling at the edge, wanting what we shouldn't, and afraid of how badly we wanted it at all. Her restraint was the loudest thing in the room. The distance she'd created between us was barely a step, but it felt like miles. My skin still tingled where her fingers had grazed mine, as if the echo of that touch refused to fade. Neither of us looked at our hands. We didn't need to. The air had shifted. My husband and hers stood behind us, quiet now, not interrupting, not intervening. Whatever this was, it had narrowed. Tightened. Focused. On her. On me. You think I don't fight this? She asked softly. Her voice wasn't defensive. It was fragile. Honest. The question settled into my chest like a stone. I searched her face, really searched it. The strength she wore so effortlessly in public was gone. In its place was something exposed. Vulnerable. A woman standing at the edge of a truth she could no longer outrun. I see the way you look at me, she continued, her voice lowering to almost a whisper. Like you're daring me to cross a line. My pulse stumbled. I'm not daring you, I said quietly. I'm trying not to. That confession cracked something open between us. For a second, neither of us breathed. She stepped closer again, slowly this time, intentionally, until the space between us felt charged enough to spark. I could feel the warmth of her body without contact. My heart pounded so hard it felt visible. I don't want to ruin everything, she murmured. Neither do I. But the way we were standing, the way our gazes locked and refused to release, already felt like ruin. Her hand lifted hesitantly, hovering near my waist. Not touching. Just there. Close enough that my body reacted anyway. My breath thinned. My thoughts scattered. If we do this, she whispered, so quietly I almost didn't hear it, there's no going back. The words weren't a warning. They were longing wrapped in fear. My fingers rose before I could stop them, brushing lightly against her wrist. The contact was soft. Barely there. And yet it felt like everything. She inhaled sharply, eyes fluttering closed for a fraction of a second. I felt her lean in, just slightly, like gravity had shifted again. Our foreheads nearly touched. One more inch. One more breath. The world behind us dissolved into silence. And right there, suspended between hunger and hesitation, we hovered on the brink of something that would change us forever. The rain began just after midnight. Soft at first. A gentle tapping against the windows, like the sky itself was holding its breath. The house was dim now, lights lowered to a golden hush. Shadows moved slowly across the walls as if time had decided to soften its edges for us. No one had planned for this moment. It simply unfolded. We stood in the living room this time, no doors half open, no accidental discoveries. Just four hearts that had finally grown too loud to ignore. The storm outside felt like permission. Like a curtain drawn between us and the rest of the world. She stepped toward me first. Not hesitating. Not trembling. Certain. There was no audience in her eyes now. No fear of being seen. Just truth. When her fingers brushed along my arm, it wasn't a question anymore. It was an answer. Warmth spread beneath my skin. Behind us, our husbands stood closer too, no longer frozen observers, but participants in something quietly understood. A boundary had dissolved, not in chaos, but in acceptance. In choice. Her breath mingled with mine as we moved closer, foreheads touching lightly. The contact was soft, almost reverent. My hands found her waist, hesitant only for a heartbeat before settling there, grounding us both. "You're sure?" I whispered. She didn't respond with words. Her breath melted into mine. The rain grew heavier, tracing silver lines down the glass. Thunder rumbled low and distant, like applause from the heavens. The room felt smaller now, warmer, filled with the sound of slow breaths and racing hearts. Her husband stepped beside me, his presence steady, calm. My husband's hand brushed the small of her back, not claiming, not taking, just there. A shared understanding passed between us all. No jealousy. No ownership. Just the fragile beauty of vulnerability. Skin met skin through fabric, through warmth, through closeness that felt electric without being hurried. When she leaned into me fully, our bodies spoke the words we had swallowed for months. The tension dissolved into something fluid and undeniable. There was no rush. No frenzy. Only the slow unraveling of restraint. Her fingers traced along my shoulder, sending a quiet shiver down my spine. My husband's forehead rested briefly against hers, and I saw something in his expression I hadn't seen in years, not possession, but permission. Rain, breath, warmth. For souls letting go of fear at the same time. And as the storm wrapped around the house, we surrendered not to impulse, but to honesty. To the longing we had all tried to bury. The night didn't explode. It unfolded. And in the soft glow of rain light and trembling exhale, we finally stopped pretending. Morning arrived quietly. No thunder. No rain. Just pale sunlight filtering through the windows, exposing everything the night had softened. I woke first. The house felt unfamiliar in daylight, too still, too honest. The air carried the faint scent of rain and something warmer, something harder to name. Memory. For a moment, I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying fragments. Not images. Not details. Just feelings. The way breath had mingled. The way walls had fallen without a single one of us speaking the word love. Was it love? Or was it permission to finally stop pretending? Beside me, my husband shifted awake. He didn't reach for me immediately. That hurt more than I expected. Not because of distance, but because of uncertainty. We were both searching for something in the quiet. Across the room, she stood by the window, already dressed, arms folded loosely around herself as she watched the morning light spill across the yard. Her husband sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor as if trying to piece together a version of himself he recognized. No one looked triumphant. No one looked shattered. Just, changed. She turned first. Our eyes met, and there it was again, that gravity. But softer now. Less frantic. More grounded. What had happened between us hadn't burned out. It had settled deeper. I don't regret it, she said gently. The honesty landed without drama. Her husband exhaled slowly. Neither do I, he admitted. But that doesn't make it simple. Nothing about this was simple. My husband finally looked at me. Really looked. There was no anger in his expression. No accusation. Only vulnerability. I felt closer to you last night, he said quietly. Not farther. The word surprised me. And then came the twist none of us expected, the sharp knock at the front door. All four of us froze. Another knock. Firm. Persistent. Reality had arrived. Her eyes widened slightly. My pulse quickened. Whoever stood on the other side of that door represented the world we still lived in, friends, family, expectations. My husband stood slowly and walked toward the hallway. Each step felt heavy with consequence. When he opened the door, it wasn't a neighbor. It was her sister. Unannounced. Curious. Smiling. And in that single second, we understood something clearly. Whatever this connection was, it didn't belong in secret forever. Secrets rot. Truth demands air. As she stepped inside, chatting lightly, we exchanged a glance that said more than words ever could. Last night wasn't escape. It was revelation. And now, standing in the raw honesty of morning light, we had to decide whether what we felt was strong enough to survive the daylight. By the time her sister left, the house felt different. Not exposed. Just honest. The polite laughter at the door, the casual small talk, the normalcy of daylight, it had all pressed against us like a mirror. And in that reflection, none of us looked ashamed. Shaken, yes. Changed, definitely. But not ashamed. When the door finally closed again, the silence returned, softer now. Not sharp like the night before. Not heavy like the morning. Just quiet. She stepped toward me first. No hesitation this time. Her husband stood beside mine, close but not guarding, not claiming. Whatever had unfolded between us had stripped away more than tension. It had stripped away illusion, the illusion that love is possession, that desire must be hidden to survive. I don't want to lose this, she said gently. Then don't, her husband replied before I could. The simplicity of it stunned us all. My husband moved closer, his hand resting at the small of my back, familiar, grounding. He leaned down and pressed his lips softly against my forehead. Not out of apology. Not out of fear. Out of choice. And I felt it then, the shift. We weren't breaking apart. We were expanding. Not recklessly. Not blindly. But honestly. She reached for my hand in front of them all. No secrecy. No trembling. Just warmth. Our fingers intertwined naturally, like they had always known how. Her husband exhaled slowly and brushed a strand of hair away from her face, resting his lips against her temple in quiet reassurance. There was no competition in the room. No rivalry. Only understanding. We take this one step at a time, my husband said softly. Together. Together. Not two against two. Not lovers against spouses. But four people choosing truth over silence. The connection between her and me didn't burn wild anymore. It glowed. Steady. Intentional. Something deeper than a stolen moment. Something that had survived daylight. She leaned her forehead against mine again, this time without fear of who might see, and smiled faintly. Last night wasn't escape, she whispered. No, I replied. It was us finally being brave. Outside, the sky had cleared completely. Sunlight poured through the windows, warm and forgiving. And standing there, hands intertwined, lips resting gently against foreheads, we chose peace. Not the easy kind. The earned kind. And as the house filled with light, I realized something profound. We hadn't lost anything. We had found the truth we were strong enough to hold.